So we're going to write a program related to finding outliers. This will give us the interval of values that are not outliers. So basically what we did at the end of the class last time. So we did that work with the IQR and stuff like that to figure out what the range of non-outliers are. And then we determined if there were any, visually, if there were any values that fell in that interval. The reason why I'm going to show you this way, rather than write a program that'll actually just flat out tell you what the outliers are, the reason why we'll do it this way is because there's actually a functionality in your calculator that will tell you outliers. It'll just say, these numbers are outliers. It just doesn't show you how those numbers came about. And so if you need to have work shown on a test, it's not going to do you much good. All right? So, to the calculator. To the Hindenpeter. Reference? No. Family Guy? Yeah, actually, I don't even have it in those calculators. This is a fresh one. So yeah, if you borrowed it, definitely. Okay, so go to Program, PRGM, right below Stat. Let me just make sure again, repeatedly making sure. So PRGM Program. It might be a blank slate for many of you. If you got your calculator secondhand, or if you've actually written a program before, or downloaded programs, whatever, then you might have some stuff in here. But if it's a new calculator, it should be a blank slate. If it's a blank slate, or you have stuff in there, either way, it's going to be the same deal. You're going to go over to New. So hit the right arrow twice, or you can just hit the left arrow once. Works smarter. It'll say Create New, which is precisely what we want to do. So enter. It'll ask you to name it. Name your program. If you screw this up, if you screw up the naming, it's not the end of the world. There's a workaround. It's just a pain in the ass. So you generally don't want to screw up the name. So take your time. Don't hit enter until you're absolutely sure it's spelled the way you want it to be spelled.
You don't have new, what do you do?
What's that?
I don't have new, right?
When you hit program, you don't have new. If you hit the right arrow, like in the top.
Calculator's broken.
Oh, your calculator success mode. So is yours. All right, hold on. I got it. So we're going to call it outliers. Now you see we have a blinking cursor with the letter A inside that blinking cursor. That means that the alpha key has been enabled, which means that anytime I press a button, it's going to default to whatever the alpha option is for that button. Right? So my alpha button's green, so look for the green option. So anything that's in green when I select these buttons, that's what's going to come up. So basically that's telling me that I can write stuff. So I'm going to type in outliers, or as much of the word outliers I can get, because there's a limited number of characters allowed. So let me type option 7 for O, 5 for U, 4 for T, close paren for L, x squared for I, sine for E, and multiplication for R, and let's see if I can get an S in there. ln for S, outliers. Once you're satisfied that you spelled that correctly, hit enter. And you can see, no matter how hard I try to hit the up arrow, I tried 20 times, it won't let me go back into that title area. So I'm stuck with that name unless I do the workaround, which I told you earlier is not easy to do. All right, so I like to include a little blurb on what the user would need to do in order to use this program, but that's entirely up to you if you want to go that route. You could just kind of jump right to it because it's your program, you're the one using it. If you're writing a program for someone else, you might want to preamble it. You might want to make a little statement about, what the uses are of the program, how to use it, and things like that. Right? So I think we can just jump right to it. Right? So what I'm going to actually say, though, is that the individual needs to have some data plugged in. There is a way to actually input the data within the program, but odds are you've already put the data in before going through the program, but I'm going to make a statement anyway, at a minimum, just to show you how to do it. So you're going to hit the program key. All right, so when you're within the program editor, program does something else now. It brings you to a different menu. The control menu, input, output, and execute. All right, so control, you can see the options. Those are your conditional. Oh, control. It's conditionals, not control. I/O, input, output, is really where we're going to be living for the most part. Execute is if you want to run a program within a program as a subroutine. So that's obviously not something we're ready to do. What I want to do is display. So I'm going to I/O. So I hit program to get in here. I/O option 3. So now whatever comes after this is going to get displayed. Now if I want an algebraic expression or a string of characters, that would need to go in quotes. If I just want a constant or a numerical value, I could just type it in. I want a little preamble here. So what I'm going to do is open a set of quotes. You see the quotes are above the plus sign. So alpha plus. That opens the quotes. So now everything that comes after this is going to go in as a string. All right. So you can see my cursor blinking black right now, which means that the alpha lock is not on, which means that if I type an 8, I'm getting an 8. All right. So I don't want an 8. So let me delete that. Now, in the stat editor, when you're typing data in, clear is your best friend, delete is your worst enemy. In a program editor, clear is your worst enemy, delete is your best friend. Roles reversed. Because what clear will do is wipe out the entire row. So if you just took 5 minutes to type in a nice, really long string of explanations, details, instructions, etc., and then you accidentally hit clear, it all goes away and there's no undo button. All right, so that would suck. All right, so what I'm going to tell the user to do is input data or something to that effect. I'll say, make sure you plugged in the data already. Data plugged in or a question mark, something along those lines. So what I'll say is input data. So I'm going to alpha lock, which means I'm going to hit second alpha so that my blinking cursor has an A in it, which means now I'm back to where I was when I was writing the title. So I'm going to write input data. Something simple. So input. The space button, not obvious. Again, nothing about this calculator is intuitive. You see that little bracket facing upward above the 0? That means space. So if I hit 0, it's going to give us space. All right, so I think I really want to ask the person if they already inputted the data, because they should have done that before running the program. So I'm going to put a question mark after this, which is right above the negative symbol. So it takes a little getting used to the typing the letters part because it's not a QWERTY pad. It doesn't work like a regular keyboard. So you got to kind of hunt and peck, but once you get a handle on it, it starts going a little quicker. And again, it's a one-time deal. You do it the one time, you never have to do it again. So I want this question mark here so that the individual knows that I'm, in fact, asking them a question. All right. And then I want to close my quotes. So hit the plus sign. And that's the end of the string that I am displaying. Okay, so now I want it to actually do some work for me. So I'm going to have it do the stat calc business. Stat calc 1. L1, comma L2. All right, I did that quick, but I did it quick because I have it written right here. All right, so it's the TI-83 way of writing it. They haven't upgraded the interface for program writing yet, and I don't think they ever will. So stat calc 1 to get this guy. Let me do this shot here. No, of course, never put it. Stat calc 1 brings up the 1-bar stats. I want it to be L1 and L2. Because again, we're not really going to be bothering with any calculator work. I mean, most people don't anyway. When it's a short, simple list of data, it's only like 5 or 6 values. Just do it by hand. It's easier. Like you'll have the problem done before you can type the data. It's when you have a frequency table where you have an L2 that you really want to get the calculator involved. All right. So hit enter. This is behind the scenes work that's happening. The calculator will run this calculation behind the scenes. It's not going to necessarily tell you anything unless you tell it to tell you. So display is where that comes into play. All right. So what I wanted to do, because now it will have computed Q1 and Q3, and those are the things I need in order to determine my interval for outliers. So I'm going to go into my vars menu, and I'm going to figure out the interquartile range. So I'm going to do 1.5. The IQR is Q3 minus Q1. So we did this before. It's in the vars menu, statistics. We're going over to point. So vars option 5 puts you in statistics. If you go to PT, PTS, D after this last one. It was option 9, but the downward arrow tells you that there's more options. That's the key to everything. So if you're looking for something and it's not on the display, and you see a downward arrow, hit the down arrow. Odds are the thing you're looking for is just a little bit further down the line. All right, so option 9 is Q3 minus vars statistics, option 5, PTS, option 7. All right, again, one-time deal. So you hate this if you're not, if this is not your style. If you're like, this is terrible, I don't want to do it. Stop, please stop. Let us go home. I understand. Once it's in, you don't have to do it again, but you get to use the program, and it will give you answers that you don't have to do by hand. So that's your host, right? And that's also the preamble for the next step, which you're not knowing. So the STO key stands for store, because whenever we do calculations, we want to store the results of those calculations somewhere in order to use them later on. So the reason why this is not, again, an intuitive thing is because what's on the key here, STO, is not what comes up on the screen. you hit STO here, a sideways arrow comes up on the screen. All right, and when you see sideways arrow, you think sideways arrow, you know, like move to the right, but that's not what it is. This is telling us, or telling the calculator, to store the answer to this into something. What I want to do is store it in as a variable. I'm gonna choose I. So alpha x squared. I is going to stand for interquartile range. So if I stopped and ran the program right now, it would do all the things I asked it to do. It wouldn't tell me any answers, because I haven't told it to tell me any answers. But now the value of I would be the interquartile range. So if I ever hit the I button in the home screen and hit enter, it would give me a number. That number would be the interquartile range. So it's kind of nice if you remember that I is the value that you're looking for. But what I want the program to do is be explicit. I want it to just spit out answers. Right? Give me the whole shebang. All right. Also, I need the interval for outliers. So just a refresher. I'll use calculator lingo here. Q1 minus 1.5 IQR, comma, Q3, we said LQ and UQ, but the calculator speaks in Q1s and Q3s. Right, so that's what we have to get in the program. So we're almost there. All right, so I need this calculation, except I'm using I in the program for IQR. All right, so I'm going to do Q1 vars statistics PTS 7 minus 1.5 IQR. We've already, oh, actually, sorry, the 1.5 IQR, we've already done the whole shebang. That was the whole point. This whole thing is I. We don't need the 1.5 either. So alpha x squared. So that gives us this piece. We're going to store that in as L. L for lower bound. And then we're going to do Q3 plus I. So program, I'm sorry, vars stat option 5 PTS option 9 plus I, stored in as U. So those are the lower and upper values. And remember, I started all this by saying, we're going to write a simple program. You got to see some of the monsters that are out there. I mean, they're time savers, but there's a lot of logic that comes into play. Right? This is pure calculation. Right? So 1.5 times the IQR we call I. We need a Q1 minus that. We need a Q3 plus that. We have those. Still have not told the calculator to tell us what the answers are. Now, if I remember that L and U are my lower and upper bounds, then I'm good. But what are the odds? You know, do you want to write it on your index card? No, you want the calculator to tell you. Tell me the answers. So program IO, so right arrow to IO, display, so option 3. And then if you know what you're looking for, you could just do L comma U, because if you know you're looking for a lower and upper bound, then that's fine. If you need a little reminder, then you might include a string. that says lower and upper. So that's what I'll do. So I'm going to alpha lock second alpha, open quotes, so the plus sign. I'm going to type in lower. He can't help you now. I got out of the alpha lock, just so you know. If you're in the alpha lock and you want to get out of it, hit alpha again. That's what I did to get the comma sign. So I typed in lower. I wanted just a regular comma sign, so I hit alpha. To get out of the alpha lock, I hit comma, and then second alpha to lock it up again. And then I'm typing in upper. Close the quotes. Hit alpha again to get out of the lock. Now I want the calculator to actually tell me answers. So comma, alpha, close paren, comma, alpha 5. Alpha 5. Is that the character from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Is it Alpha 5? Ay, 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 that one? Yeah. I knew it was Alpha something. They created, I think, an Alpha 6, and that one had some insulting conglomeration of a Brooklyn / Boston accent. It was, like, mildly offensive. So display the words lower and upper so that we know that we're looking for a lower and upper bound. Then it actually gives the lower and upper bounds. And once you do that, you look at the two numbers. If you have any numbers that fall in that interval, they would not be outliers. If they don't fall in that interval, then they are outliers. But it's the interval that we care about here. So hit enter to lock it in. And we should have a fully functioning program. So to get out of the program editor, we hit second mode. Never clear. Ever. I mean, there were some lines that we wrote in there where you're like, oh, I don't have to write that again, right? So definitely never clear. So let me get some data in if I don't already have some. I want some data in L1 and L2. As long as you have equal number of values in L1 and L2, you're fine. It doesn't matter what the data are. All right, so let's see if our program works. So I'm going to quit out of here. Program, outliers, Hugh Jackman. All right, it worked. I mean, I have no idea if these are the right answers, but it gave us answers. And that's magical. All right, we just don't want an error message. Error messages are like, all right, I went wrong somewhere, I don't know where it is. But if you ever have, when it says error, below that it might say quit and then goto. It's not goto, it's go to. Go to means go to the problem. So never say, if you see a go to as an option, don't select quit, select go to. It's going to take you to the scene of the crime. If you're going to figure it out, that's how you're going to figure it out. Right? Most of the time, if you use a minus sign instead of a negative sign, something like that. But it's something that you can figure out. All right, so now I know that the lower bound in my outlier, in my non-outlier interval is negative 36.5. So I don't have any outliers on the low end. 87.5 is my set of outliers on the upper bound. So then I would go looking in my data set, stat, edit, and see if I have any numbers in my L1 that are bigger than that upper bound. 52 is my biggest number. That's not bigger than 87.5, so I don't have any outliers. All right, so I'm able to come up with that interval. So just a quick flashback. That was here. All of this work did not need to happen. All right. Now let's say you do have a raw list of data, because this program is tailored for a frequency list. You can still work with a raw list of data. So stat, edit. Let me just clear. If you have a raw list of data, you can handle it one of two ways. One would be to look for any repeated values. Here we have none, so I can't look for that. But basically, you build a frequency table. So I type in 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think that's a 10, and then 42. This is really the moment of truth because we have an answer, and if the calculator gives us something different, then we screwed up. And by we, I mean I. So I need a frequency list. Well, in L2, I don't want to leave it blank, but the number 2 occurred once, so I could put a 1 there. The 4 occurred once, so basically I'm going to put a 1 for every entry in L1. So now it's a frequency table. It's not the world's most profound frequency table, but it's a frequency table. So program, outliers, enter, -3 and 17. So that is what we got here. Lower and upper bounds. Now I just, based on visual inspection, I can tell that 42 is an outlier. None of this needed to happen. All right, I got my interval. And when I ask you to identify outliers and show all work on a test, I need the interval and I need the answer. I don't need anything else. Because if I can reasonably, within a certain degree, a reasonable degree of certainty, I guess, that's probably overselling it, but if I can convince myself that one could do this type of question in their head if they wanted to, or just by doing a lot of hand waving, you say, okay, the median is 7. All right, I got 4.5. I got 9.5. That means my IQR is going to be 5 multiplied by 5 by 1.5. Whether you do that on the calculator or in your head, you get to 7.5. You know, like none of that stuff needs to be written down because it could conceivably be happening behind the scenes. So that basically gets me to the idea that I don't need to see any of this. I just need this and that. All right. So now you have a program that'll do just that. If you don't like it, well, can't please everyone.
I have a question. Do you put the steps on the or in your?
This, it'll be in the video, yeah, and also here. Yes, I am recording everything, yeah. And let me save that before.